Hello, Chalo. I'm Kathy with a K, radio broadcaster in Honolulu and Hawaii POV, Point of View, talk story series. It was mainly to just gather up people, Radio Music Hawaii affiliation. This is Jason Miller. I want to say I've known you for like at least 2 decades.
At least, yeah.
Yeah. So Jason Miller.
But we're still only 21, right?
Yeah.
So.
I'm not lying about my age, but I'm not sharing that intel either. The first time I met Jason Miller, it was Goldenvoice Honolulu. They had a shop here. And I was always doing green room, or I was a driver. You were also working with Goldenvoice in that capacity.
Yeah, I did a little bit of everything also, and I was a stage manager for a bit, and I worked in the office while there was an office before they left town. So yeah, it's just a little bit of everything, same thing, just yes, I'll do whatever you need and go make it happen. And there were some great times, a lot of great shows. Well, I think it was the first year that there was the big melee at Kualoa Ranch.
93?
That sounds about right, because I moved here in 92 from California, came out here to swim for UH. I grew up in the punk scene in the 80s in California, right? And so I was standing around the big melee trying to figure out how I was going to sneak in.
Oh my gosh, okay. That sounds about right for a lot of, kids.
That was the plan, you know, drove out there with no ticket, no plan to buy a ticket, but expected fully to get in. So I'm out there trying to figure out, you know, my plan. And Mari comes along and she's like, you, and I need help. You know, I'm like, okay. And she asked us to pick up a tent and take it into the venue. And then she said, okay, now go have fun. And that's how I met Mari. And then you would see her everywhere at every show because she was Goldenvoice, you know, in all practical sense here in Hawaii. Then, of course, you know, I'd go and ask her, hey, do you need any help? Like, you know, you were so kind to me at the other show or whatnot. And it just grew from there. We kind of became friends, and I would help her with whatever I could, you know. But that's how it all got started.
When kids go to University of Hawaii and they want to be in radio, KTUH, the trade-off is you have to have at least one class or be a part-time student at the Manoa campus?
Right, there's a certain amount of credits that you need, and then you can be on the air. You know, you go through a quick training course and whatnot, but you need to be enrolled, and then when you graduate, you have a 6-month period of time after graduation that you can stay, but then you got to go and make room for someone else. I remember the most fun I had a Friday night slot, I think.
Wow, prime.
Yeah,
how did you get that?
I mean, you just be there long enough, and you know, it's kind of bid for it type of thing, seniority based probably. I forget now; it's been so long, but I started out like everyone does, from like 3 to 6 in the morning, you know, and did that for a little while. But I actually liked the later hours because I could play whatever I want. There's no restrictions on language.
Well, they got
things.
that safe harbor.
Right. Yeah, so I just bounced around for a little bit, doing different shifts, and then I wound up with the Friday night one, which was pretty fun. Although it would conflict sometimes with something you might want to go do. Yeah. And then I left Hawaii to play water polo on the mainland, and I started doing the same thing at the Stanford University radio station. Most recently, I was working at a commercial station as a volunteer, just doing like a 1-hour show once a week. K-Rock, 101.5. There's all local band stuff, which is, you know, what I love. So, but it just became too much, you know, so I kind of stopped doing it because I needed to focus on other things.
So you have 808shows.com,
right?
Hawaiian Express Records, the Hawaii music scene in particular for underground in the rock or punk vein, ska. 808 shows, and then you can find the Hawaiian Express Records. And not just local bands, I saw like TSOL. How did that come about? I mean, it's one thing to love music, but to fund it.
Growing up, I was so focused on sports, and a lot of my friends were focused on music. And one of the easiest ways to spend time with, you know, friends that I didn't feel like I had time to commit to being in a band with or something, was to just try and help them out, right? So, and a lot of times they were great at making the music, but they weren't really sure at all how to do any of the rest.
Starving artist. It hits all genres of music.
Totally, yeah. You know, and so they'd be like, oh, well, we really want to do this, or we want to put on a show or whatever. And in my mind, and still most topics today, I'm like, well, how hard can it be? Let's try and figure it out. So that whole DIY, do-it-yourself thing really resonated with me from an early age, and that's where it all just grew from, because I knew I could do some things when I had the time for it, but I couldn't be like, yeah, I'm going to join your band, I'm going to practice, and I'm going to do shows, and I'm going to just be available, you know. I was had too many things going on, you know. So it just kind of kept growing and growing and growing, and the more I helped someone, then, you know, others would want to get that same kind of help, or you know, bands come and go, so then the next project they're part of, that we'd team up and do something. So it just came natural, and now it's 162 albums, I think. And
talking about radio and music, especially in our islands, is like, I'm always surprised when people are surprised. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know there was like a rock scene. I didn't know there was alternative music."
Yeah, I hear that so much.
Yeah, and it's like, thank goodness for the internet, because then there is a way to get it out.
Oh yeah, it's made it so much easier. But it's so much better than it used to be. And it saves me hours and hours of going putting flyers on, you know, telephone poles and restaurant windows or whatever. So I'm a fan.
At least getting the word out. April 27, 2019, it's a tribute and a fundraiser for Les Hernandez, who we lost. He was diagnosed with cancer.
He had prostate cancer, yeah, and within a year of his diagnosis, he was passed, you know, and which was just recent. And it's unfortunate because he was a great storyteller, awesome songwriter, was in some amazing bands here locally, and you know, he'll be sorely missed for sure. But yeah, there's going to be 8 different bands that are going to come and play. We're charging $10 at the door, and it's all going towards his medical bills, and you know, his mom and dad, you know, could definitely use the help. So. That'll be April 27th at the Old Façon, which is by HBU, Fort Street Mall. It was a great club in the 90s, and he brought a lot of bands. Yeah, he brought a lot of bands back in those days. It's a music venue again, because for a while it was some kind of study hall or something, some facility for HBU. But now it's a music space again called On King.
Yes.
And so that should be a fun night for sure.
When you were growing up in Southern California?
Up through high school, I was in Campbell, California. It's next to San Jose, kind of made famous by the band Rancid. One of my oldest friends is one of their guitar players.
808shows.com.
Yep.
When did that start up?
That actually launched on January 1st, 2001, because it's 010101. It's very memorable. But I had been doing something, just the Hawaiian Express Records side, a concert calendar. 808shows.com seems so much cleaner and easier, and so I launched that site. And now it's more of just strictly a concert calendar page and links to the albums. Kind of the underground alternative stuff, metal, ska, punk, rock, those kinds of things. But I also list comedy events.
Because they need love. They need a lot of love. Yeah.
But what I tend not to do, because you know, it is all volunteer primarily, I try not to do all the, you know, local music stuff, and in some reggae I'll do, especially if it's someone I know. Try not to have it be all encompassing, because it would just be a lot of work.
You first came here for college. You went to the University of Hawaii at Manoa.
Yeah, I had a full ride scholarship to swim for UH. And
how did you do?
Oh, I was great. I mean,
they kept me on.
You know, if I can be so bold. But no, I mean, I was a very talented swimmer. And,
what years were you active?
Well, I moved here in August of '92. Right out of high school, I went to Long Beach State on a full ride there. It's just sort of the path that anyone that was somewhat good at swimming did.
Is that school known for their aquatic team?
Well, we were at one point. Our coach actually was like a Olympian, and you know,
Who was the coach?
Tim something. I can't even think of his name now, but great guy. I'm sure it'll come to me as soon as we stop recording. But I had a full ride scholarship to Long Beach State, and I didn't apply anywhere else. Well, I did apply to Stanford, and I was accepted, but I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I thought, okay, well, that's no good for my pocketbook. Went to Long Beach State, and 2 years into it, they cut the program, and my scholarship went with it. And I actually took a year off and trained for the Olympic trials. Just went back to Northern California, and that's all I did for a year, was just train constantly. But a buddy of mine that was on the Long Beach team, his backup was Hawaii. So he came out here, we stayed in touch, told me how great it was, that I'd be a good fit here, those kinds of things. So was he
headhunting you?
A little bit. I mean, a little bit, yeah. And so when they offered me a full ride, I said, okay, well, there's what I'll do next. I tend to be very go with the flow, and you know, had Long Beach State gotten, you know, a different outcome, you know, kept their team or something like that, I may have never come to Hawaii, and certainly not lived here and done all the things that I've tried to do. So,
how did KTUH factor in? How did you find that, or how did it find you? I
saw a flyer or heard about it, but yeah, I went down and signed up, and yeah, it worked out really good. And then I remember I answered an ad for a room for rent. When I come to check the place out, I see this music collection that looks just like mine. You know? And I'm like, okay, this is a good start, you know. It turns out it was John from Fuddy Duddy Fanzine. He's a teacher in California now, but he was really dialed in with the local music scene at the time. And then he slowly introduced me to where all the clubs were, and you know, since there was no internet back then and those kinds of things.
Just the other day I was walking down Smith, and it was at night, and I looked up Smith and Hotel. The Wolf Fat sign is still up. And I remember going to shows there.
The last show I did there was with GBH, and
oh wait, I want to say I went to that one.
Could have been, but that was like 6 years ago.
Yeah, I was still drinking.
So.
That's why I'm pretty sure.
That's why you're not sure. maybe not.
So the flyers that you have, are they ones that you created, or they were from shows that you attended?
I keep a copy of every show I've done, which is in the hundreds at this point. So that's why.
How do you store them?
Photo album almost. You know, so it's real large, but most of my posters are that size. So I've got a bunch of them in that, and then I've gotten so lazy with like organizing them.
It's a fire hazard.
Yeah, most of them are just now in a big plastic tub, but I'll make sure I print one out, and I always print one out and put it in the tub. And I learned that actually from Bill Graham, a super famous promoter, you know, in San Francisco, because I worked there for a bit as an intern. And when you work for Bill Graham Presents, no matter what you do in the company, any show that they have, they've got these large envelopes, and you get a poster from every show, and they're collectible posters, and some of them are worth big bucks. They'll make sure that everyone gets a copy, you know, and then when you leave for whatever reason, you get to take that with you. I have plenty of things that I've picked up from going to shows or from my time at Goldenvoice. They weren't necessarily my show, but I worked them and I saved them, and yeah, eventually it's just taken up so much space. I had someone who was eager to take them off my hands, so I let them go, you know. But I had just a pile of stuff, and
well, if you ever
of all sizes.
Redistribute some of the posters, please let me know.
One of my favorite things about doing a show is creating the flyer. I do about 75%. You know, myself. The other 25%, maybe something's given to me, or the band already has it ready-made, something like that. But yeah, I love that. And sometimes I'll spend way too much time like looking at all the layout and this and that. But it's one of my favorite parts of promoting a show. But it's just enjoyable. And someone showed me how to use Photoshop and Illustrator one day, and off I went. Well, YouTube I'm posting a lot of videos and things, but I also did something on the 808 Shows site. I think it's radio.808shows.com, where basically if I released it or had a hand in making it happen, I've made it available for download and for listening and whatnot. But it took me a long time to get it. Plus there's so much of it, but it took me a long time to get it there. Now I'm focused a little bit on the video side because I have tapes and tapes and tapes of stuff, so trying to get that uploaded. Maybe one day I could get to the posters. My earliest locals only show that I did, it's just lines, like there wasn't really a picture or anything, but it was Tweaked, Unit 101, and Ira Hayes.
Oh my God,
at the
that's
UH
such a good
Campus
lineup.
Ballroom. Oh, it was amazing. And I actually just found the video for that show, so soon I'll be posting those 3 sets. So that was the first thing I did completely on my own. There was a lot of things I teamed up with, like K2H, because I was a promotions director for a spell. The first mainland band I brought out was in February of '96. It was a band called Zoinks. They're kind of a pop punk band from Reno, Nevada, really, really good. And then I was able to get them and Grapefruit added the next day to the Green Day show, their first time in Hawaii.
Andrews Amphitheater?
No, that was the second time in '98. In '96, they played Richardson Field by Pearl Harbor. Mari was kind enough to take my suggestion on local bands, which it's always nice to be able to get at least a local band on a spot. February of '96 was that first mainland band I brought out here, and I've lost count now of how many different visiting bands have come out and how many local band shows only I've done, but it's a lot.
That's why you keep the posters.
Right, yeah, it really is, you know. Because sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, I did that show.
People mistake becoming aware of what you're doing now as, oh, you came out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. I mean, I meet people that weren't even alive when I started doing all this, you know. And, you know, because a lot of the stuff I do is still all-age crowd, you know. And I mean, I have my children now working the door at events and stuff, and I embarrass them mercilessly all the time. So
hugs and kisses.
Or just being silly. Like, I mean, just the other day, my son wanted to get some new shoes, and I seen this like unicorn cat-eared thing, and I put it on my head and walked all around the store, and he's dying. But I was dying too, in a better way.
Yeah.
Just loving every second, 3 of the 4 are teenagers. I've got 4 boys. One of them's turning 10 this year, but the others are teenagers, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I've been doing this since March of 1995. Legally, formally, everything, got my tax license and all that stuff set up 24 years ago.
Is that how you mark? Whereas before then, it was like, I'm just doing this for fun? Or was it like, take me seriously because I have all the paperwork?
When I was little, I knew I wanted to own my own business and run something. In fact, I still somewhere I have drawings. I would think I was like a sophomore in high school or something, and I had this project, blueprints basically for what my club was going to look like, right, when I opened up my own club.
Yeah.
Pretty early on, I was like, well, this is going to be legit. This is what I'm going to do for a long time, so let me go and, make sure everything's in order so that I don't, somehow mess it up or anything like that. So, but it's just been a long time now. I never did open up the club because I came to realize that the only way to keep a club going is to have all kinds of styles of music that I'm not interested in being part of. So, but at least I learned that along the way, realized how hard it is to really have a club, that's going to be successful enough to keep the doors open and whatnot. So I just cherry pick now and have my events wherever I feel it's going to fit best.
When you were listening to the radio as a kid, were there stations that played the music you love now?
Some of the college radio stations, it was the days of trading cassette tapes and, the older brother that had the new, punk rock record that, you'd get your hands on or hang out at their house and listen to, those kinds of things. But yeah, the radio really was not helpful for punk rock.
Who are some of the bands that you listened to that were just, oh my goodness, it kind of blew things open just because it wasn't on the radio? Well,
I mean, I feel very fortunate growing up. Like, my dad was really into English rock bands and Jimi Hendrix. He was a huge Beatles fan and just all this English stuff, Cream and, these kinds of things. And then my mom was all about outlaw country and like old school, like rebel country and stuff. The first concert I ever went to, my mom was born and raised in Reno, Nevada, and we went up there at one point, and I saw like Merle Haggard or Waylon Jennings or something as, a 6-year-old or 7-year-old or something, and it's still memorable, and has become a big piece of my life. That might have also been the trip where my mom decided she wanted to teach me a very valuable lesson. And we were outside of a restaurant, I think, waiting for my dad to pay the bill. She had like a silver dollar, right? Okay. And she's like, okay, I want to teach you this important lesson. Puts silver dollar in the machine, pulls the handle, and wins $20. I'm like, this is the greatest machine ever. Like, let me do it, And total backfire, of course.
Right. That's why you're a promoter. Promoters are gambling.
It's totally, yeah. So I had that growing up, and I still appreciate it to this day. I mean, I'll listen to just about anything and appreciate it for what it is. Came a time where all I started hearing was punk rock through the friends I had in the neighborhood, at least for that kind of music. It was part of it is part of Silicon Valley, but back then it was like the blue collar working man's kind of neighborhood, bikers and everything. That's where they were located in those days. It was the first thing to really speak to me. My dad had his thing, my mom had her thing, and I'm like, okay, this is what I need to be listening to, and just never stop. One buddy would drive me to school in the mornings, playing whatever latest album he had, in the car, and finding out what I liked and didn't like, and going down to, I would ride a bicycle probably like 30 minutes to the nearest record store that actually might have some punk rock records, and pick up whatever I liked, and then same thing, just start trading with people, and But yeah, that's kind of how it all came about. Is at least music was a part of my life even as a kid, and then I finally heard what I liked, and I became like a huge Sex Pistols fan, because it was like '84.
Was the Sex Pistols like your first album that you bought with your own money?
It might have been the Vandals' Peace Through Vandalism. It may have just been because that's what I could find. I'd go all that way on my BMX, and then they'd have some things, but certainly not everything you might be interested in. And then I started going up a little more north, like Berkeley. There's some amazing record stores in Berkeley, and
Amoeba.
Yeah, Amoeba was
famously.
one, Rasputin's is another,
Wow.
and then there was some independent ones too back in those days. And I remember I'd spend all this time getting up there, and then I'd spend hours looking through all the vinyl and whatnot. And that's where I first started seeing a lot of bootlegs and live albums. I have a lot of tapes, but it's not from back then. It's more from like when I was at KTUH. I'd record some of the stuff I did. There was a surf movie that had a film premiere out here in Hawaii, and then they also had bands Pennywise, Guttermouth, the Vandals, I think, and Blink 182. Sack Lunch, which was I think Rob Machado's band, they all came to KTUH. Like 20 people.
All at once.
All at once, and I mean it wasn't much of an interview, but it was a fun time. And Blink 182 was really kind of new at that point, right? And so when the show happened, I remember I sold their merch, and they were like so green. They're like, "Here's our stuff. We don't know what to do with it or whatever."
We don't know.
Now they probably make.
Did you do account or anything?
They probably make more than I do in a year just in merch alone these days. But and they had just recently added the 182 because they were just Blink at first, And then that's the other thing too is I had all these amazing albums, and like with Blink and no 182 on it. Someone stole it when they were at my house, and all these records that came out on an indie release and then got re-released on some bigger label. I had the indie version; those all get stolen and stuff. What I found with the videotape project I've been working on, getting all those things digitized, tons and tons and tons of the cassette got next to a magnet or out in the sun too long or whatever. Yeah, and they're just unusable. Eventually posters I might start putting up. The cassette tapes probably on the list somewhere too. Just finding the time and the energy is the hard part.
Where do you store everything?
Basically have in my home, I've literally got this like vault, if you will, like that's just got tons and tons of this kind of stuff. It's a cool, dry area, and I don't need it for any other purpose, so I've just sort of like filled it full of stuff. It just happens to be at my house. Well, I had a site dedicated to pictures, basically, not the posters and stuff, but well, actually there was some posters on there. It was primarily pictures that I had, that she had, that I'd gotten from some other people, but the whole thing crashed, and I just haven't rebuilt it. I have the scan still of probably the bulk of it.
Going to start a Jason Miller intern program.
That would be a great solution.
You'll be paid in watching the door and taking ticket money at shows.
Right.
Life experience. And you'll be fed a zip pack.
Yeah. Sounds like a good, if anyone's interested, you let me know.
When you first got into promoting, you were at KTUH and you were working with the promotions. Where did you find the moxie to be like, I'm gonna do this?
If I set my mind on it, especially if I get a challenge, like with swimming, my coach was so good to me in a lot of ways, but one of the techniques he used was just challenging me to do it. And then I'd say, hold my beer, watch me do it, that kind of a thing. So that's probably just part of my nature and always has been, and especially when I hear someone, that needs my help or wants my help, or simply just says like, I don't know how to do this, something, it'll just ring around in my head until I find out, well, how do you do it? And then I can either do it for them, show them, whatever, And I don't like to be idle, I'm not the kind of person who just goes to the beach and lays out, because I'll just sit there thinking of, I should work on this or I should do that, or,
Oh, this is a great idea, and then pack everything back up.
Right. So I think it's just sort of how I've always been, and a lot of times it was the bands being able to make this incredible music that I appreciated, and I'm like in their practice space or something hearing it, I'm like, well, other people need to hear this too, so problem solving, I guess, is kind of what I'm good at.
Who was the first band that you proposed, let me produce it, let me engineer it?
Well, I worked very closely with Grapefruit from Kailua.
I have the 45.
Oh, right, yeah. Loopy on Bus Fumes, with Letterman on it, yeah. Johnny, who I mentioned earlier, he did that record with them, and I worked with them on some live albums, and then I was there with them when they recorded their studio albums, but that got put out by a mainland label. I remember Brandon had me choose the song order on the first album and these kinds of things, so I worked very closely with them. We did 3 summers in a row that they toured the mainland. I was there for all 3 of those tours. I didn't go to every date on the very first one, but that was kind of a short one. I just happened to be there. But for the next 2, we did 26 states together, and I booked all the shows, and I helped sell the merch and drive the van and do whatever I could. So they're very close. And then Les is another one. The person I think I've done the most projects with would be Les Hernandez, you know, who
Let's
unfortunately
talk about
has passed.
his bands.
Okay.
Yeah. So how did you become acquainted with Les?
Well, it's one of those things where once I met, you know, Fuddy Duddy John, and he started introducing me to people, it just snowballed so fast, you know. But Les and Kevin and members of the catalogs, they were hosting a bunch of shows at Fast Zone, which is why we're doing the Memoriam, you know, benefit show at the old Fast Zone. I mean, he was just the nicest guy ever. Talented, like I said, in so many ways. His songwriting was great. The Queers, an internationally known band, covered one of Les's songs. They liked it so much. Another Girl. They reworked a couple of the lyrics or lines and things, but his hooks and his melody and all that kind of stuff is what they liked the most and preserved. Another Girl by the Queers is actually written by Les Hernandez from Kalihi.
He gets credit on...
Yeah. They put on a couple of things. It's on their live record. It's on, I can't remember what studio album they did, but yeah, his name is associated with that. And that's how it all got started. And then he was also in a band called Crawling Chaos, and most recently he was in the Quintessentials. Their early name was The Products. All of those bands I've done the albums. Grapefruit was the earliest, and the first CD I did was with the Power Pellets, which is another band that I took on tour, you know, helped get them shows and literally drove the van and all that. So various different firsts. The first and only DVD I did was with TSOL, one of my favorite bands from way back. I knew someone who had some video gear and some talent in that regard, and they were coming to town for the first time ever in 2003. And I said, hey, would you want to do this? And they said, sure. They're so easy to work with despite the status they have. And then they came back actually a year later for the release of it and all. Grapefruit was the earliest. When we were going to go out on the road, that's a little bit of how it all got started. I wanted to take like a little mail order catalog on the road with us because I couldn't take everybody's stuff and sell it. People could order it online through the mail. Online. I think I had a website, but it was like...
He's trying to shave years off by saying online.
When AOL was huge, they had like these really long URLs. Like I think that's what's on the catalog. Is, you know, AOL.com/. I have a bunch. Yeah. And I have the originals because I would go to Kinko's. And I'd cut out stuff and I'd paste it, glue it, tape it, whatever, to create the thing, and then I'd photocopy it. And I still have all of that. So
much that you have available, 808 shows or Hawaiian Express. How are you able to have back catalog available and on sale?
Some of the albums I've got boxes and boxes of them because we specifically wanted to do it in a more professional manner. Got the shrink wrap and the whole bit. The majority of what I've done is short runs and made to order kind of things. It is possible, but I just invested in some equipment that lets me print on the CD and then I just have to go and get all the supplies. Like the DVD had to be, I think we made 2,000 of them or something, and we reordered. Vinyl's a little different story too. You have to usually do at least 250 copies, because I definitely don't do it with every album. I've only done a handful, in fact. The last one I did was with the Quintessentials and Les, because he just had never done one and he really wanted. He'd been on a 45 like compilation before, but he'd never had one of his bands be the focus. So we did the latest album on vinyl. And
how did that come out?
It sounds great, you know, but one interesting thing is that you have to remaster the audio to be put on a vinyl format. So there's an added cost for that, which a lot of people aren't willing to spend, or if they just do their CD version, it doesn't sound very good. We decided we'd invest in it because it hadn't happened before. So it's really just a call between the band and whether, you know, we feel like there's a market for it. You know, you can't just throw away your money either. You know, like you gotta make some decisions that, you know, make some financial sense as well. It's a fun project, and when you get them back, it's pretty cool. CDs are just so much easier, and then you can do digital downloads even easier than that, and sometimes it becomes a little too much.
For the bands and the members, are they seeing any kind of return?
Some are certainly more popular than others, or have a bigger fan base and those kinds of things.
Could you suggest, as a businessman, you know, if there are people who like, what do you think? Should I just make shirts? Should I just do downloads or stickers? Maybe stickers, like a quarter each? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I personally think there should be something, right? And I find a lot of people they might have it, but they don't even bring it to their own show, you know, and, which I think is a mistake. I think you should easily do stickers. You know, you can get, my friend stickerguy.com, $20 you can get like 250 stickers, you know, so who doesn't have $20? And that's shipping included, so you know, you should at least have stickers that you, even if you just pass them out for free, like it's not gonna kill you. A little extra money, make some shirts. At least I like a physical copy of an album, you know, doing more than a digital download of some kind. Vinyl, I understand, doesn't always make sense for everyone because you do have to get so many and they cost like $8 or $9 each. I like when people have physical copies of things and actually make it available. Then again, I don't always bring all the stuff I have available to shows, you know.
That's why. So, back to that catalog you had on the road when
right.
It was just AOL.
Yeah, I try and pump the website now, but who knows, one day it's probably going to just be digital, and that's just how it's going to be. I'm not a huge fan of that.
Like you just continue to do it till it's not fun anymore.
That's exactly what I've been telling people for years. Yeah. That, you know, if it's still fun, I'll still do it. I may not be as active as I was at one point. I need to focus on something for a little while. Like when I was raising my kids, you know, when they were much younger, I was a lot less active, but I've never stopped completely. Maybe I'd take a break for a few months or half a year or something. I'll miss it. And so then I'll come back and like I'll do the next half a year like a ton of shows. You know, perhaps my kids will keep it going, or you know, someone else will come along that I can entrust all the stuff to, and you know, see.
The Willy Wonka of Hawaii's punk rock metal and
I need to go find
ska scene.
Gotta go get some golden tickets and find a Charlie in my life, you know. But
you open like the Lihing packet. Very Hawaii.
I like it, you know. And it actually, so when Les was passing, he entrusted me to all the rights to his music and everything. Wow. He kind of had expressed that, like, hopefully your sons can keep it going. If not, find a home for it. I'm going to try and follow that model, you know, and just find someone that I trust, honor it properly, you know, because that's my promise to him, is that I'll just keep it available. I'll do whatever I can to make sure that people don't forget about it, at least can access it. Try and do the same when it's my turn. I definitely consider myself like part-time archivist. Stuff has come and gone, you know, that I've seen just because we didn't team up on it or whatnot, and the band broke up, they lost interest. My other go-to statements is that I wasn't the first and I won't be the last. I'm just doing what I can do. You know, there's plenty of other people promoting music. There's plenty of other people in the future that'll do it. I'm just, and I'm not trying to, you know, feel like I'm the best or whatever. I just want to do what I can do to help, and I feel good about at least whatever I've worked on is still around, whether the band broke up years ago or so.
Are you willing to take, like, to increase your storage space? So if there's anybody who has masters,
because if the alternative is that it ends up in the dump or something, you know, then I'd more than, you know, happily take the responsibility of keeping an eye on it. It would be a discussion with whatever surviving members of the band. A digital age now, but then again, MySpace lost, what, decades of content. It's up, but they recently, a couple months ago, they
like
accidentally deleted years and years worth of data and content. And so if you try to think, well, if my band has their music up on, you know, some website, there's no guarantee that that website doesn't go away or doesn't have some kind of accident like MySpace did. But then again, I mean, I tell my kids all the time, like, you know, you're going to laugh at an iPhone one day when you're my age, you know, like I did homework on a typewriter, and, you know, like.
Typewriter?
Yeah, like it's going to be a whole nother world 20 years from now, you know.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, well, things change, that is for sure.
When you were at K2H, do you remember the name of your show that you settled into?
I think we called it the Friday Night Freak Show or something. Yeah, I teamed up with Johnny Fuddy Duddy.
Okay.
He came on later. I'd worked there for a little while. 90% of it was just punk rock and, you know, lighter stuff. We couldn't play too many things, at least in the first half of the show or so, that had swear words and things. So we'd play the stuff on the lighter end in the beginning and a little heavier in the last hour or so, because we could get away with it. But not always the best radio, but we were having a blast, so that's all that matters.
If you're not having fun, what's the point?
Right. But one thing that I'm most excited about lately is I teamed up with Josh from the 86 List and Black Square, and we've started doing the Sailor Jerry Festival. 5th year this June is going to be the 5th year.
Pretty good guesser.
Yeah, right. And it's grown every year, which is wonderful, because it started out with 7 venues, and now we're up to like 17 venues or something, all in and around Chinatown. Sailor Jerry is an actual person. There's now a rum with his, you know, name and images on the bottle, but he was never part of that. And was a tattoo artist, and he has ties here to Hawaii. His shop still exists on Smith Street. You know, he died in '73, but his shop
1973.
Right, but the shop's been there ever since, and passed down to different artists over time. But a lot of people didn't know that, and I didn't even know that. And I've got tattoos all over the place. Just, you know, I had corporate jobs, so you can't see them, you know, when I got clothes on. It was something that he and I both, you know, he's got full sleeves. Josh does. Something we both are admirers of. The more I learned about, you know, the history here, and I've come to meet the family and all this kind of stuff, it just seemed like a good thing to celebrate, a good thing to, you know, educate others about. It's been very well received and grows every year, which is fantastic. June 15th will be the next one, June 15th, 2019. This year our headliner is going to be Youth Brigade, an old punk band from the 80s in Southern California. And we've had some really great acts. A lot of people just like the idea and the concept, and they're fans of the art form as well. And there's ties here to him, and he's legendary. I'd highly recommend a documentary called Hori Smoku, Horismoku. It's about 90 minutes long, but it's fantastic, and it gives some of the history that I couldn't get into right now. We play that at the festival, and you know,
cool.
We have bands and comics and burlesque dancing and, you know, giveaways and tattoo specials. So the art show gets bigger every year too, which is really nice. There's so many talented local artists, you know, so it's great to be able to feature their work, sell some of their work. You know, we don't make a profit on any of those kinds of things. Amazing talent here in Hawaii, so it's been fun.
Let me get this straight, Jason Miller.
Okay.
808shows.com,
Yes.
Hawaiian Express, the Sailor Jerry Festival, because you're motivated. Your goal, getting the word out. You're not money
wise
motivated.
Decision. Yeah, never have been. It's always been about helping a friend, or, you know, if I don't do it, who will, or you know, these kinds of things. And there needs to be an element of finances involved, so I try and minimize any losses or whatnot. It's always just been, how can I help? There's been some painful financial disasters along the way, but if I can just break even, I'm happy, you know. The rest of it is just making it happen because I'd like it to happen, you know, more than anything. And
you're living your like 12-year-old fantasy life. It's like you get to enjoy the music that you grew up enjoying, and like spending time with people who have that same kind of affection for the lifestyle and the music, and other people who are coming up or that inspired you. That's like, if you would never have like dreamed this life.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, and I feel very fortunate. You know, I've got friends, you know, all over the planet, and you know, I'm making more new ones all the time, and you know, it's something that I'm very appreciative of. I know I'm kind of lucky.
Jason Miller is a very humble guy. I mean, you can't say that about yourself. I'm humble, because that just negates it. But he's a good egg.
Well, thank you.
You're a good
I
egg.
do appreciate you saying that. But it's fun too. I mean, like Suicidal Tendencies were just in town, and I got to hang out with, you know, some of the members and go hiking and go to the beach. You know, if I'm on a trip somewhere and they're playing, they'll get me into the show, or you know, whatever. So it's not like I go completely unrewarded, but it's never what I'm seeking. You know, just trying to be a good person, or, you know, big believer in karma and treating others the way I want to be treated or would hope to be treated.
What do you value in your life?
Well, family, you know, family for sure, especially now that I've got people that depend on me, you know. Wow, I mean, beyond that, happiness, health, you know, stuff that's not always on the top of people's lists, you know, like I don't need a mansion, I don't need, you know, things, especially when my kids were growing up. Like, I'd buy them things, sure, toys or whatever, make them happy, but I'd much rather spend whatever money I had on trips and memories and, you know, activities, and take a lot of pictures along the way, because they don't remember. You know, half the time I don't really remember, like, until I see the picture, I'm like, oh yeah. You know, those kinds of things are way more important to me than items or status.
That's good. Well, don't ever stop having fun, because then it would really affect the music scene, at least in our islands. So.
Well, I'll keep, like I said, I'll keep doing what I can, and others will too, and it's all good. You know?
And if you ever want to get rid of those posters.
Well, like I said, most of them are gone already, but I do have a few still stashed, like some I just couldn't part with, you know. And some are hanging on the wall in my house or whatever.
Are they actually framed? Do you treat them with any kind of reverence?
The 11 by 17s, I have a bunch of those framed, and I have a bunch of, you know, more that I'd like to frame, but it just hasn't happened. But
is there one that you can't part with?
silk-screened Ramones in Hawaii poster. I have a couple of the Green Day First Time in Hawaii posters. The big ones. They're probably 3 feet by 4. It's one of the characters from the Banana Splits. Like, he's got sunglasses and he's like a gorilla or something. I can't quite remember either, but that was featured on the Green Day poster. The Ramones one is just this guy like kind of screaming, and high-end silkscreen stuff like the Taz stuff, and you know, some of the others. I can't remember who did those ones specifically. They might be Taz, in fact, but yeah, some of that stuff I didn't get rid of. I've got a bunch of things like from Punk on a Rock, which was another Big Melly style stuff that came here, but just did punk bands.
Of course, you're going to go to the Descendants.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't miss it. I took Bill and Milo surfing the last time they were here, and well, Bill mostly floated in the shore, but Milo was trying so hard to get a wave, and you know, so hopefully we'll hang out again when they're back.
I've never seen them. I finally got tickets. Yeah, so.
That's a great show. They play forever. You know, they do 30+ songs, and
well, all their songs are like 2 minutes. No, I'm kidding. No. I don't know. Maybe I won't include that. I don't know.
2 to 3 minutes maybe, but but no, it's going to be a good time for sure. You know, and they were amazing when they were here last time.